Tesla does not have enough knobs. I want knobs and buttons. Well, some people say that. Not necessarily me, not necessarily my guest today, Herbert from Brighter with Herbert, but we will discuss it. I'm Brian. Welcome to my Tesla weekend. Good day to you, Herbert. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Brian. Love being on your show. Thank you.
It's so much fun. Now, you have owned a car or two in your time. Is that true?
I've owned many cars,
Many
probably eight or
cars.
10. Yeah, more.
Sure. Now, a lot of people, traditionalists say, I want a knob for every function. So why doesn't Tesla have knobs? What's the reasoning behind getting rid of all the knobs?
Well, Tesla's philosophy is no part is the best part. Less parts to break, less parts to deal with in terms of cost. It's all about cost reduction, but also first principle thinking is what I would say, right? It's very similar to what happened with the Apple iPhone and the BlackBerry. If you were old enough, I'm not sure how young you are, my little child, my little baby boy, my friend. I can only say this because we're friends, but I was there. My wife refused to use the iPhone. She loved the BlackBerry, and you could type on it, and you got knobs all over the place. And there was this big question mark when the iPhone came out. It says it's a slab, and you would now touch it, and you would just use the keyboard on it. But the idea that this can form, if you need it to be a iPod, it becomes an iPod right in front of you just by changing the screen. If you need it to be a movie playback video, there it is. It turns out that way. If you needed to type an email, it turns that way. So this just makes sense that this one slab of a screen and everything touch screen, but yet there's muscle memory. I mean, we're old, right? We've been around for a long time, decades and decades of using cars. And so we're used to turning the radio by it's like muscle memory, right? You know, do you remember doing this to roll down
For
the
sure.
car window, right?
For sure.
Why would I press the button? That was a big change. Instead of doing this, now I have to press the button. Now I don't even do that if I want the Windows. Well, no, the Windows is a bad example because that one is a button.
That one is a button. So I had a Android, an early one with T-Mobile, the G1, and it had a keyboard, and I was committed. I wanted that keyboard. I wanted a tactile keyboard. And they were disappearing quickly enough, and I was pretty frustrated until my friend said, "Do you want to just play with my phone for a minute and see how it works?" And that was all it took. I just needed to experience it myself. A lot of people have not had the experience. So it does make the design cleaner, but the real reason is you don't need most of those buttons. One guy was saying, well, I don't think it's safe to not have the headlights somewhere with a physical button. And I said, headlights? I've never thought about headlights since I've owned this car. They're just on. When you need them, they are there. When you don't, they are not. You've got your daytime running lights and then your headlights. And when I pull into my carport, they are instantly on. There's no lag, there's no delay. It is just there. So I don't think about that. I
That's a
don't,
very good example. That's a
yeah.
fantastic example. In my Toyota minivan, there would be so many times we'd be driving the car and then realize, oh, the headlights are not on because they have three buttons on the left, and you had to make sure that it was in automatic because you could turn it off. And now in the Tesla, I don't even have to think, like you said, it's not thing I worry about at all because it just automatically takes care of it. Do you know how many times I used to drive without headlights because I forgot? When you rent a car, the first thing I tell my children, always first thing, check the lights. Is it set to off? Because as soon as it become dark, it's a new rental car, you don't know how it works. You need to make sure that it's an automatic.
For sure. When you look at other things, well, the example you gave was the radio. I want all the radio buttons to be a thing. Well, you've got the volume right here on your scroll wheel. But now I have Spotify. It's wonderful. I recommend everyone get it. And once you've got a station playing, you've got the button right there on the shuttle wheel to skip to the next song, which does everything I would want it to do. That is plenty of buttons for me.
I was going to say though, the question I've
Yeah.
got is why? Like, so it's one thing when you're coming from one model and you're trying to move to another model, and so that's why they had skeuomorphic as a transition, right? That is where when you were used to where you're used to working at an office and you have a desk, and then you have your garbage can, And so now when they did the Windows and you're using a computer, they show you a garbage can, right? It looks like a garbage can and you have a filing cabinet. And so you understand it, mental models, the same thing. But when the car came to the cars, people are fighting and they don't want those buttons, but they've already gotten used to their phones. So what's the difference between knowing how to use your phone already to control the music and now using just the big, the screen on the car to control the music? Why is that such a big deal now that you've already had so much transition time?
Exactly. That is the fine question. And I think a lot of people, it comes down to familiarity. This morning, I wanted to turn on my front defogger. So rather than press climate and then the button, I just hit the voice button and said, turn on defogger. And it turned on the defogger. It has worked well for me. I don't think I've had any times when the voice commands didn't recognize, except when I got halfway through and forgot what I was saying. I've done that. So from Tesla's perspective, why would they want to eliminate all these buttons?
Well, again, I think they're starting from scratch. They hadn't, built cars before, so they wanted to start from scratch and think it through. Versus, I think that what happened to the other legacy is that they have these buttons. They're already in order. They're in their supplies. They're in the factories. And so they need to use them. And the more that they use them across all their cars, the cheaper it becomes. And I do find it funny that, there comes a point where too many buttons, and you'll show some photos, right? Of these
Right?
cars that have way too many buttons. It doesn't help because at that point you're like, decide which button am I supposed to do? And there's like 20 of them.
Right.
Which one am I?
So with
So it
the
doesn't,
picture
yeah.
that I sent you yesterday is a car that has in just on the center console 40, 50 buttons, most of which Tesla doesn't have. Now it does have the seat adjustments down on the seat. That's fine. If anything, I'm surprised those are still there but like, well, the mirrors, I want a mirror. I want some complicated switch that handles my mirrors. Really? Because I set them when I got the car and that's where they are and they're fine. And you have driver
So,
profiles.
yeah.
So if you wish to swap between drivers, you can have different profiles. So everything is just set up and you can take it to your rental car, which is neat too. The matter is cost. All these switches that you have in a modern car are already interfacing with the computer. They're already going back to the control system in most cases for most functions, and then the signals being distributed from there. So that's a lot of wiring that you get to eliminate. That's a lot of buttons themselves. And okay, so fine. A button costs what? $1. The wiring costs what? Another $2. So we're talking $3 a button. Right, but if it's 30, 35 buttons, you're talking $100 a car. So you're good at math. What is $100 a car times 2 million cars? Yeah, that's pretty good. That's $200 million a year by not having buttons that people statistically don't use at all. They might use it once or twice. Now I liked
Yeah,
having
I think the
some
problem
of them,
is
but
the legacy auto don't have software. They're not software driven. And so it's just easier for them to have a button, put a wire, connect it to the actual part, and that turns on. Otherwise, they'd have to work with that manufacturer, that vendor that they bought that whatever area that little part is, and then have them code the software, but they don't. They don't have the centralized software. That's harder for them. So they'll just put everything as a button. It's easier. Make it a button.
it
Connect
is
it.
very easy. This week, Volkswagen announced we're going to go back to more buttons because we have found that drivers don't like a computer interface. No, Volkswagen. They don't
I
like
don't think so.
your computer interface. If
I
your
mean,
system doesn't work well, of course they're not going to like it.
does BlackBerry still exist? Does Nokia with the flip phones still exist? They don't because the consumer decided that the big screen phones are the ones that they'd rather use.
And some of those brands may exist as the name, but they don't exist as the industry leading powerhouses that they were. And if you can cut 100, 200 off of the price of a car, it doesn't take very many units before you're talking about real money. It makes your cars easier to fix because there's less pieces to go wrong. It makes your supply chain easier to maintain because you have fewer parts in the car. It makes the car go together more quickly because there's less stuff to install. All of it cascades. And yeah, pretty soon you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars for something that while some people may not like it, I did see a guy who said, I'm never going to buy another car unless it doesn't have, you know, an infotainment system at all.
Mm.
And I said, well, I maybe you're not going to buy another car because by law, you have to have a backup camera. So they're going to be putting in a screen anyway. And to think that they're not going to use that screen, I mean, you don't have to use it, I guess, but it's going to be there whether you like it or not. Well, I want a car I can fix. My friend, those haven't existed for over 20 years. Those are not a thing anymore.
I do agree, though, that there is problems. It's not panacea, right? Because we have consolidated to everything on the screen, and so there are, sometimes you're trying to accomplish an activity, and you do need to drill into multiple menus, and you can't do that while you're driving. So certainly, there's going to be some situations where it would have been nice if there was a button that I could press, if I, I'm in muscle memory and I knew where it was. But I think you have to kind of weigh that negative versus the world that is opened up for you. Because now there are, like you said about the infotainment system, where else can you now watch Netflix or Amazon Prime or play video games like Polytopia? Any video game you could basically play. You just, open, and you can surf the web. Just unbelievable the new features that you can get because you've got the screen and you can control things through that screen.
And that is kind of just the beginning. Now, I don't know if you have sexy buttons for your car, but these are aftermarket buttons that plug into the control port USB in the back that are, little tiny buttons that you can put anywhere in the car and
I've heard about that.
assign additional features. So, for example, you could have one that turns on the heated seats in the back. You could have one that I know Chris from Dirty Tesla has one behind his screen that he uses to unlock the glove box. I thought that'd be a great use, and then I realized I don't open my glove box. I have done it once to put the registration in, and that was it. But aftermarket solutions are not the same as just having a car that does what you want it to do. And I will still say that until we get steer-by-wire in the way the Cybertruck implements it, where you can keep your hands on the wheel, lock to lock, that putting the blinkers and other functions on it doesn't make sense to me. And I have driven the Model X with the yoke. I enjoyed it. I found the yoke very easy to get used to, took a matter of minutes. I never had problems in parking lots or anything like that, but I did have problems finding my blinker in a roundabout. And roundabouts exist. They are a real thing. And getting rid of the blinker stock to me felt like a solution in search of a problem. And Elon has always said, if you don't have to add something back in, you haven't cut enough parts.
I mean, yes, they might add that back in, but it's on its way to first principles, which is you're not going to be driving the car. This is
Mhm.
robotaxi. Be able to take that and plug it, push it forward. You don't need the stock. So you're right. Sometimes they remove things because of a future product plan forward, and then it is annoying for folks or it's difficult. But it's all going to come together. It's all going to make so much sense
And a lot of it
future
already
wise.
does. The steer by wire that we saw in the Cybertruck is critical for robotaxi. You don't want the occupant to be able to grab the wheel and commandeer the vehicle. It's not safe. You would have to block off that part of the car so that some joker doesn't climb up there and crash it on purpose or commandeer the vehicle. It's crazy. And the steer by wire allows that. And also, it allows you to play the beach buggy racing without rubbing your tires on the pavement. I mean,
Sure.
gotta consider the value of that. So really,
Yeah.
it's about cost. It is about convenience, and it is my opinion, having driven it quite a bit, that it works. That the reduction of buttons has not gone too far. You still have a physical button for your hazard lights. You still have um, the seat controls. You still have a number of things, but a lot of things that you would have otherwise had a button for just work on their own. Things like the rear view mirror dimming. It's just done for you. You can override it if you don't like the way it works. I know someone who did that because their night vision was not good enough that they felt comfortable using the auto dimming mirrors. But we're there. We are there. We are most of the way there on most of these things. And like you said, It's all starting to make sense. The picture's becoming clearer, and other companies are following suit because just like with everything iPhone does, oh, they got rid of the headphone jack. Can you believe it? Oh yeah,
Mhm.
we did too.
Mhm.
Yeah, they'll make fun of you until they realize why you did it. Getting rid of the charging cable. I've got
Yeah.
so many of those. You don't need to give me that other $3 of value. I can find, because they're all using standard chargers. It's not like in the 90s when every phone had its own charger, which was ridiculous. So, guys, in the comments, what do we miss? What do we misunderstand? Leave it so we know. Like, subscribe, do the usual things. Head over, visit Herbert. Check him out, see what he's up to. And everybody else, stay tuned to Juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the next one.